gentlemen.
Uh-oh.
It's time for the Early Bird Special. Bringing you the best stories from the world of sports and sports entertainment. Now, here are your hosts, Sparky and Burdick.
This is the Early Bird Special right here on ESPN Bakersfield, and it's time to talk Raiders football with our guy Jason Horowitz, the voice of the Las Vegas Raiders. Sir, how are you? Thank you for joining us in video today.
Yeah, how about that? One of these days it actually works.
Right? I'm sorry about that. It's so touchy.
Now you guys get to see how tired I am.
Dude.
Like I got 6 eyes going right now.
I mean, well, you were able to go to Washington to obviously follow the Raiders in that game against the Commanders last week. Didn't end the way we wanted it to, but, I mean, what were your thoughts on the game as a whole?
I mean, right from the get-go, it was you could tell something was off, right? Deebo Samuel had a 69, 70-yard kickoff return, and really from there it was downhill. I liked the fight that the Raiders had to get back from that hole to tie things up at 10. But guys, it was kind of reminiscent last year of the Denver game, and Washington scored 24 unanswered after that, and a lot of the numbers that were put up late kind of were some window dressing. Trey Tucker, it was really nice to see have a breakout performance, but it puts a lot of pressure on Sunday afternoon against Chicago, right? No question about that.
Absolutely. And I mean, the Trey Tucker thing, I have to highlight that as well, because from what we saw in Vegas on Tuesday, Geno is really starting to target Trey and trying to get him involved in this offense more and more. Was that by design, you think, or is it just the chemistry between the two of them is the best between, obviously, all the wide receivers?
Well, I mean, Geno talked about that in training camp. He compared Trey Tucker to Santana Moss, in some other, and obviously it works out that he has his best game, and it's in Washington where Santana really became a household name. So it's some of that, but we want to say that, but then week 2 against LA, Trey was completely a non-factor and wasn't targeted, didn't have any real impact on the game. So look, I think sometimes we overreact to week 1, then we overreact to week 2, and then we overreact to week 3. But the reality is after week 4, you're 25% almost of the season, right? And so now you start to actually have developments of what an NFL season is going to be. And the Bears' defense is kind of a mixed bag, right? Statistically, after the first 2 weeks, I believe they had given up the most points, but you've only played 2 games, and one of those they allowed 52. So, I think you're starting to kind of get a feel now for what a team really is. And in this particular game, I think the Raiders' offensive line is really going to have its hands full, both pass protection and moving the ball on the ground. So this is going to be a telltale sign, I think, of what's to come.
I have to agree, and I think this is going to be a great test for the Raiders, obviously, because the Bears getting their first win with Ben Johnson last week. Do you think that Chip has any idea of how to get Jeanty going as well? I saw a statistic that 100% of his yards have come from after his contact or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a ridiculous stat. So do you think there's going to be any kind of scheming to potentially get him an open lane instead of having to take these hits?
Yeah, the funny thing is I'm sure those stats have been thrown around in previous years, and we always have more analytics and more things. So this is something that probably wasn't discussed 15 years ago, 30 years ago, right? Barry Sanders was always hit behind the line of scrimmage. So I'm sure these numbers have been around, but I've never seen it before, right? I believe the number is 145 yards after contact. Yeah, and on the season he has 144 yards. So it's something crazy like that. The answer to your question is I hope so, right? And we haven't been told this for sure yet because we've been talking this week about hearing about competition. I think we will see Jackson Powers Johnson back in the starting lineup. He's healthy. He had a full week of practice. Pete Carroll said after the game last week that he hadn't really had a full practice, so they wanted to let Alex Kappa be back in there at right guard. But I don't know, guys. I mean, week 1, Jeanty had 22 yards on his first 3 carries, and then he had 16 yards on 16 carries after that. And, and Geno Smith was sacked 4 times in week 1, and then he was sacked 3 and now 5. So I I'm not sure what is going to look different until we actually see it look different. And I don't know if that means getting the ball outside on pass plays to Jeanty more than run plays. I don't know if it means, last night I saw a really cool play on the second play of the game in the Seahawks-Cardinals game where they spread Kenneth Walker out wide, and Darnold took the snap, immediately threw it down the line of scrimmage, and it went for a 29-yard pass play. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know, but they're going to have to figure it out because Ashton is too special in open space to not get him the ball in open space.
I agree with you. And honestly, he's a dynamic player. Just the thought of him having 100% of his yards really after his contact is wild to me. How do you think the defense is going to approach going against a guy like Caleb? Obviously, he likes to play his version of hero ball, run around a lot. Yeah. Max Crosby, though, is one of the best at being able to chase down those types of quarterbacks. So how do you think they're going to approach this?
Well, this has to be, and this is not, it's going to sound like it's a knock on Max. It's not a knock on Max, right? He is the heart and soul of this team. He has been for 5-6 years. Everyone knows how special he is, and everyone knows how good he is. And his numbers even this year show that he's having a good season. But the reality is the last 2 weeks, and this probably speaks volumes to his character about how much he's fighting to the end. But the reality is the last 2 weeks, he's kind of been neutralized in the first 3 quarters. And it's not until the game is seemingly out of reach until he's starting to flash and some of those skills. And so I think some of that has to show up in the first half, right, Max? Because if that does, that's also then going to open things up for some of the other guys to make some plays too. So I am looking for a special first half for Max against the Bears and Caleb Williams. So I want to see some of that. The tackling the first 2 weeks, you guys, was good. The tackling in Washington was bad. And they were the first ones to admit that after the game. So that has to be cleaned up. But, Kirk Morrison's the ultimate optimist. And my partner says in his review of the tape is that, hey, it's all correctable stuff. So hopefully they get it corrected and this looks like a different game. But I'd say this, Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, I think, are just going to start to mesh. And they're only going to get better. And you start looking at the weapons they have with Rome Odunze and DJ Moore, and they got guys. And so this is DeAndre Swift in the past game. Like, they got guys. So this is a tough test.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think you guys have the secondary to really match up with these receivers, though. The chemistry between Caleb and DJ really hasn't been there as much as you would think it would be. But Rome Odunze has silently become one of the better receivers for Chicago, so it's going to be a big test there. Are there any major injuries or anything the Raiders are dealing with right now?
Well, major in that you still have the Brock Bowers situation, right? I mean, he's played the last 2 weeks, but his numbers, his effect don't seem to be the same as he was in week 1 or any point of last year. So look, he's playing, but is he effective is the question. Michael Mayer is still in concussion protocol. So now you got that aspect. So tight end, where you felt was a strength, now has got an injury. So that's your one spot. The reality is, other than that, though, the Raiders have come out pretty healthy the first 3 games. So you feel good about that. But I would push back a little bit on your Caleb Williams, DJ Moore. I mean, the dude still had 97 catches last year. So, and they're going to get him the ball in space when he, as a rusher as well. So I think it's more on last year, Caleb Williams took 68 sacks. Last week, Caleb Williams was not sacked at all. And they didn't turn it over. And the offense didn't have a single pre-snap penalty. So is that more of a indictment of the Cowboys defense, or is that about the Bears getting better? And I don't know the answer. We'll find out on Sunday.
Honestly, I would lean more towards the Bears figuring it out on the offensive line. They made a lot of great moves, putting in Thuney and stuff like that.
They spent a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Between Thuney and Dahlman, they spent a lot of money on the interior of their offensive line.
And what better way to make Caleb look good than to keep him upright? Yeah. I mean, the Raiders are eventually going to learn that with Geno at some point, I would hope. But
by the way, I'm shocked, by the way, that Sparky didn't jump in right from the get-go, because is he not a Dolphins fan?
Oh, he's a major Dolphins fan.
First time, and he didn't bring up the fact that I was there to see the Tyreek Hill drop and did the Bills-Dolphins last week, and the Tua interception with a chance
I wasn't
to
surprised.
win the game.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was the Tyreek thing. I don't think it was the Tua or the Tyreek. I think they were shooting themselves right after running into the kicker like they did in week 1. They had the game in their hands. They had, I would talk to our handicapper, Bull Brady, who we're talking, take the money because they were giving Buffalo 12.5. Mm-hmm. And if you took it, Miami did that part of the job. But yeah, we talked about Tua this morning about his comments about Cam Newton. I don't have anything to say. I've made my promo. If Miami is 0-4 with 3 division losses, then it's time to clean something up and start up at the top with GM Chris Greer. But, with Raider fans, what I've heard this week here in Bakersfield anyway, that they haven't given up quite yet. They're waiting on that Geno type that we've saw in Seattle. And, on paper, if you look at the last year and a half or year and first 3 weeks of this season, Caleb doesn't really play well on the road. I believe he's 1-8 on the road. So we'll see if that Ben Johnson or will be the change of that or that offensive line keeps him up.
I mean, in all fairness, one of those losses, though, was like the Commanders' Hail Mary. So, and they were 5-12 last year, right? Mm-hmm. So when you are 5-12, you probably have a bad road record, and it's not like they were great at home either. So you got a combo of that. Look,
I'm not ready to jump on any Bears bandwagon yet. I'm not sold yet.
There was a great article this week. I think it was in the Athletic from the gentleman who covers the Bears and has for a long time, used to for the Chicago Star Tribune. Who is like, hey, this week wasn't. And he went through all the things that people are trying, and the reality is Mitch Trubisky had great moments for Chicago. Justin Fields had great moments for Chicago. And they never amounted to, this is the franchise quarterback for 12, 15 years that they're hoping Caleb Williams is. So it's a great start if you're hoping that one game is something that gets the Bears jump started. But until you see a bunch of those, you don't know what that's going to be. I think the difference is that Caleb Williams is a Heisman Trophy winner and the presumptive number 1 pick for you guys know. You people in Bakersfield saw USC play, and I'm sure you guys have a whole bunch of USC fans. They saw that guy do things that college players aren't supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And so I think in this situation you're nervous because the Bears looked so different last week and the Raiders looked so bad last week. Teams don't generally I don't think the Raiders are that bad, and I don't think the Bears are that good. So I think this is going to be a fight down to the end.
I have to agree with you. And I mean, look at what Atlanta had last week too, though. I mean, 30-0 against Carolina, and the week before they looked fantastic against the Vikings. You could just chalk it up to a good or a bad week either way. But I think this is going to be a fantastic test for both of these teams to really either shut up a lot of the pundits or really just prove everybody right that they may not have made the right steps just yet. But, I mean, I would likely say that the Raiders are going to bounce back in this game. I like the matchups here. And honestly, I like Sparky. I'm just not fully convinced that Ben Johnson has been able to unlock this offense just yet.
I think the one thing, though, and maybe this is because I got a chance to spend 3 years with Lincoln Kennedy, and so my vision of how a game goes changed. And I've done a lot of games with offensive linemen as a whole. They make great analysts. But particularly, the reality is that I don't know that this offensive line can mesh because it's the same. They moved the parts around a little bit, but the names are the same from last year where the offensive line, there was a lot of blame put on the quarterbacks and understandably so. Mm-hmm. But it was the worst ground attack for the Raiders in a very long time. It was the worst in the league. And it's the same names. And now 3 games in, it's one of the worst rushing attacks in the league again. And that's with a running back that everyone's like, wow, look, he's going to be so great in the NFL. And it's with a quarterback who's really good. And so you put all those things together. And I don't know at this particular moment until something changes that this offensive line, I don't know that they're not, but I don't know that they're capable yet of being one that is going to be able to win a whole bunch of games. And if you don't have a good offensive line, you're in trouble. And so that is, I think, big concern. It's why every single Raiders fan and every single show in Vegas this week is talking nothing but offensive line because we're hearing about competition, but you got to have guys behind you to push you. And Stone Forsythe they brought in. He's someone Pete Carroll knows very well from Seattle, but we haven't seen him more than 1 or 2 snaps. And they got 2 rookies that they drafted in the 3rd round, but they said they're not ready to go yet in Charles Grant and Caleb Rogers. So I don't know.
That's interesting. I mean, do you think that there's going to be any kind of change with those young rookies at some point during the season?
If it looks this way, I think you throw him in. Yeah, I mean, if now Charles Grant's a 3rd-round pick out of William and Mary, who people projected as a project. That doesn't mean project can't come to fruition right earlier.
Right.
I think you got a better chance of seeing Caleb Rogers than you do Charles Grant. Like, if you're going to see something change, my gut would be you'd see Caleb Rogers before you'd see Charles Grant, barring an injury. Caleb's played outside, but he's someone they're working as inside. And, Stone Forsythe's a guy who's now in his 5th year in the league, and they signed him after he was cut from the Giants because the staff certainly knows him. But I'd think 3 weeks in, if we would see a change, if they're going to make a change, my gut is that you'd start to see one sooner rather than later.
Well, my final question is, you're sitting in Vegas and you're around the home, home fans. Is it the kind of the same vibe?
Well, I'm sitting
that
in
we're
New
getting?
Jersey. Remember, I live on the East Coast.
That's right. He's in New Jersey.
Get me around lunchtime.
Okay, so you're not in Vegas yet. So my question is, are the Raider fans around the kind of the same vibe we're getting here in Southern California, where, after week 1 they were, high on their horse, and then now a couple losses, now they're like, oh, we just suck. It's the Raiders. We're just another bad team.
I mean, you guys are around a lot of Raider fans there. I mean, there's so many diehards that live in Southern California, right? And so you guys know the way that this has gone for 23 years, right? 2002, the last playoff win, and only 2 playoff appearances since, and only 2 winning seasons since. So, you kind of know how this has gone. This narrative. I think the one difference is you got Pete Carroll, who's been there, done that, so successful. You've got Geno Smith, who there's reason to believe over the last 3 years, and even the 2 of the first 3 weeks, to believe that he's the guy that can make this work. So I don't think they're quite there yet. But I do think they would be there if you saw another performance like that this weekend.
That's so disheartening to hear, because the Raider fan base, when I was there on Tuesday, I was disappointed when I heard defensive chants for the Chargers, and I looked down and realized, oh God, everyone's gone. And it was so disheartening, but I would love to see the Raiders.
Well, and the crowd too. You guys were there. I think you guys were there for the Monday night game against the Chargers in person, and that was such a pro-Raider crowd, which was so awesome to see. Because the reality is, and Raiders executives know this. Las Vegas is such a destination that, particularly teams that aren't there every year, have so many fans that want to go to Vegas that heck, ESPN Chicago has put together this whole trip to Vegas that they've been putting out. And so they're doing all their shows from Vegas this weekend and on Sunday and Monday, and they have a whole bunch of fans. The report is that you're going to get 45-50% of the stadium being Bears fans on Sunday, and we've seen that a lot. So that's a lot to overcome for the home team. But the reality is, if and when it starts to happen, that the Raiders start to play better on a regular basis and give Raiders fans reasons not to sell their tickets for ridiculous prices, they're not going to sell their tickets, and it will be one of the better home field advantages in the NFL. But they've got to see the product to do that.
No, absolutely. And honestly, I hope it starts this weekend with the Bears, but we will see. Jason, thank you so much for your time, my friend. We really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you hopefully next week.